All right, welcome to SEC After Dark interviews. We're going to do an SEC Week 1 preview. I've got Bossman Slim from Biscuits and SEC, and we're going to talk all about what's going on in Week 1, the storylines. We're going to talk about the breakout players that we're expecting, and then we're going to kind of quick hit go game by game. I know there's a ton of games, but he's going to be here for a little while anyway, so we're glad to have him. How you doing, Bossman?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here, Steven. I appreciate you having me, and I've been looking forward to this all day, so I'm pumped to get into it.
Yeah, me too. Whenever I just sat here and thought about it, I was like, hey, we've got all these pregame shows, and we're going to set something up. Like I have an Ole Miss player, an interview at morning is Sunday, and I've got an Ole Miss game preview the morning of Monday, and it's like, why not do an SEC preview with the Biscuits and SEC guys and just kind of roll with that? It seems like it'd be a lot of fun.
I love it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
people are always looking for content right
Mhm.
before SEC Nation and game day, so I'm happy to be part of it.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into it. What are the week one storylines that you are looking most forward to going into this season?
Honestly, for week one, to me, there's so many, one like we talked about on the last podcast, new coaches. So I'm interested to see how those guys look, and then also kind of how their teams look around them. Right? I mean, a lot of these games are kind of cupcakes. Auburn playing Akron and others. So I want to see what those teams look like with those new coaches, those new systems that are being implemented. And then the other one I'm looking at too is all these QBs, right? Like we've got so many new QBs. We've got like for instance at Auburn, you got Bo Nix, who's now on his third coordinator in his 3 years at Auburn, and then his second head coach. So how does Bo Nix look? Also thinking about Florida, like Emory Jones. And Bryce Young, right, who just got named the starter by Nick Saban, as if we were all waiting
Yeah, it's
to
like
know who
duh.
the starter was going to be at Alabama. Haynes King at Texas A&M. So I'm really excited to see those guys and see how they look in some of these cupcake matchups. And then obviously looking at the big games, right? You got Georgia and Clemson. Can't wait for that one. I know Ole Miss has Louisville. Now we'll see how Louisville is. I've read a bunch of different things. Some people have Louisville like sixth in the ACC in their division, and some people have them finishing around third. So
Mm.
it'll be interesting to see, how they look against Ole Miss, and then how Ole Miss's defense reacts to Louisville. So a lot of good storylines, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm actually, even though people are going to watch this after the game, I'm
Mhm.
interested to see what really Joe Milton does in that Josh
Yeah,
Heupel offense. I want to see what that looks like because we don't really, I don't know, we haven't really seen a quarterback with his skill set in that Josh Heupel offense. It's been Dylan Gabriel, it's been um, Drew Lock, and those guys running through. I
mhm.
want to see what Joe Milton looks like up on Rocky Top because, I mean, Bowling Green is terrible.
Yeah,
Apparently, I talked to Corey Burton on SEC After Dark last week, and he explained that Bowling Green was one of the worst teams that you will see. I mean, they average 10 points on offense and give up 38 on defense, and I'm just as bad as it gets. So I don't know how much you can glean from it. The big game, though, for Tennessee will be the next week when they play Pittsburgh because their shot at going to a bowl game, all roads require them to beat Pittsburgh.
yeah, absolutely. And you're right. We've been following that quarterback battle at Biscuits and SEC because it was such a full room, right? I mean, you had Hendon Hooker, who transferred from Virginia Tech. You had Brian Maurer, who just transferred out. And then you got Harrison Bailey, who, looked pretty good in the spring game and can obviously fling the rock. So, I actually kind of thought he was going to win, but then, you saw the coaches go out, hit the transfer portal again to go find Milton. So obviously they weren't, too pleased, I guess, or they just wanted to add more competition to the room. And then Milton beats them all out. So in very limited time on campus. So I am interested to see how he looks. It didn't go well for him in Michigan. This is a very new offense that he's going to be in with Heupel versus what Harbaugh runs at Michigan. So it'll be really interesting to watch that. And then the other one, I know we'll go through all these games, but Will Levis at Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you know, Everybody's been talking about it. We talked about this on the last podcast too. Like, apparently Kentucky can throw the ball now. Well, we'll see. I'm not so sure about that. I mean, Will Levis was at Penn State and couldn't hold down the job because he had difficulty throwing the ball. He was a running quarterback for the most part up at Penn State. Had a little bit of success, but couldn't hold it down, and now he's at Kentucky. So can he throw the ball? Will Kentucky actually be able to throw the ball? We'll see.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Also, if I'm Lane Kiffin, I would do what I have to do to make sure I'm at the front of the line whenever Harrison Bailey hits the transfer portal. Period.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. If Harrison Bailey does end up hitting the transfer portal, I think there will be a long line, asking for him to come to their school.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move to Alabama as a storyline. They're replacing the quarterback, the running back, two of their wide receivers. You hear a bunch of stuff that they're going to look better defensively, which in modern college football, who knows exactly what that means. But it has to catch up with these guys eventually, having to do all these turnovers. You can't go Jalen Hurts to Tua to Mac and then eventually just straight into another one. There has to be a little bit of a learning curve, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's Alabama, right? I
mean,
it just seems
they're
like
good.
they reload.
Yeah.
It's just, I think the thing with Alabama is that I think it's two things, right? One, Nick Saban recruits better than anybody in the country. So there is dudes up and down that roster, which is like, you had Mac Jones last year, who was a Heisman finalist, and you had Bryce Young right behind him, who was the top quarterback in the country, a 5-star. Who didn't even see playing time hardly last year, right, because of Mac Jones.
Yeah, and a high 4-star in Paul Tyson, who's the third-string guy on that team.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, that's just one example of quarterback. If you look up and down the roster, wide receiver, right? I mean, who knew who John Mechie was until like 3 or 4 games into last year, and then he just explodes, right? And that's because obviously you had Waddle and Devonta Smith on the outside drawing a ton of attention. I'm interested to see actually how Mechie looks this year, right, when he's kind of the guy. Yeah. And defenses are paying a lot of attention to him. We'll see. I tend to agree with you. I think if there is going to be some teams that make a move in the West this year, whether it be A&M and LSU, possibly an Ole Miss, right, with that Kiffin offense, you never know. Maybe he can get them over the hump. This is the year to strike if you're one of those teams, because Alabama is losing a ton of production. They're going to be breaking in a new offensive line. Again, there's a ton of talent that's going to be on that offensive line. They got 2 5-stars, right, and another kid who's going to be solid. But those guys still have to mesh. So we'll see. I know Alabama's going to be Alabama, but I would not be surprised if at the end of the year, they're looking at 10-2, maybe 11-1, right? Which has happened plenty of times during Saban's time at Alabama, where they hit one loss and they got to get a little bit of help to get into the playoff. So we'll see. I think that they're Alabama and they reload. In my preview on biscuitsandSEC.com for the West, I picked Bama and basically said, the others have to slay the dragon.
Yeah.
A&M has to slay the dragon before I believe that it's not going to be Alabama out of the West. So
yeah, it's like a show me situation for everybody else. If you're going to win, do it. I want to see that happen. But until I see it, I'm going to pick out Alabama.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
How about South Carolina naming an assistant coach with eligibility, winning the job for the week 1? Maybe that's a sign that Luke Doty is going to be the guy. He was going to win the job. But I mean, an assistant coach comes in. I thought they were bringing him in for service team, scout team, and then that happened. Is crazy.
It's been funny reading all these articles about it, because Zeb Nolan, who's going to be the starter, walking out on Saturday or today, right? Because we're going to be showing this on Saturday morning. He's been talking about it like I didn't think I would ever put pads on again, and here I am, right? Practicing with the first team offense in South Carolina. So I'm fascinated by that. It actually kind of makes that South Carolina game more interesting to me. He got beat out, I believe, by Brock Purdy, right, when he was at Iowa State. And Brock Purdy, he's turned out to be a solid QB. So, no harm there. I understand how that happened. Didn't do a whole lot at North Dakota State, which I think is why he, hung up the cleats. But South Carolina is kind of in dire straits. They need this guy, and I'm excited to see how he performs. And I'm also interested to see, right, I think Doty's going to be the starter, no doubt about it, when he's back, right? Once he gets that boot off his foot, he'll be under center for South Carolina all year. But is Noland now the backup to Doty? Is he going to be in pads all year, or is he going to go back to being, a coach? It's going to be really interesting to watch. I think it's a fun storyline for the first week.
I think when the backup happens, unless there's an injury with an emergency, I think Colton Gauthier is going to end up being the backup quarterback, but he's not going to be the emergency quarterback. They're going to try and buy some kind of red shirt where he plays 4 times in the year. So let's move on to breakout players. What are some players in some games that come Sunday morning, everybody's going to know what happened. They're going to come out and all of a sudden be main event characters that you might not have been expecting?
Yeah, there's kind of a few out there. One of them I was kind of thinking about, I was looking at Mississippi State, and they got to replace Osiris Mitchell, who was their top wide receiver last year. So I think, it's Mike Leach's offense, right? Like somebody's going to emerge and be the guy who breaks out and has a huge game. Jaden Wally showed a little bit of promise last year, and I think that's going to be the guy, right? Mississippi State has Louisiana Tech, and I think they're going to be able to throw the ball around the yard. And I think Jaden Wally is one of those guys, that could be a big-time breakout player when we're talking about it on Sunday.
They could be playing just depth chart games, whatever's going on, but they had Jalen Wally as either an or playing second team in the slot. Yeah, it feels like they're playing games there.
I think that's some, Mike Leach pirate magician gamesmanship that's going on.
Yeah.
But I think he could be solid. And then not necessarily a breakout player, but at Ole Miss, I'm interested to see what happens at wide receiver, for the Rebels, right? I mean, lost your top 2 wide receivers in Elijah Moore and Kenny Yeboah. So, where do you guys go at wide receiver? Matt Corral is going to be an awesome quarterback this year. I think arguably is the best quarterback returning in the country. So, who is it that ends up being the guy that Matt Corral goes to, game in and game out?
Yeah. There's a situation at the slot position where Elijah Moore vacated. They have 3 players, Dontario Drummond. They have John Rice Plumlee, who has moved over there full time.
Right.
And they have Jacour Pearson, a transfer from Western Kentucky.
Gotcha.
And I think between those 3 players, you can approximate what Elijah Moore did by himself.
Mm-hmm.
Elijah Moore is not on this roster. Now, the outside guys, you have Braylon Sanders, and then you have Jonathan Mingo, and you have weapons that can be used in the pass game, but there's no Elijah Moore on this team. Although I'm looking forward to seeing they're going to use Jerry and Ely some in slot on the field at the same time with John Rice Plumlee, where they can go back and forth, one to be in the backfield, one in the slot, and you can't really know where they are. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what that looks like.
Wow, that's going to be interesting. I'm going to be fascinated by seeing that on the field and how teams try to defend that, because that's not going to be easy to defend.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty rough.
Yeah,
and they also talked about like using a 20 personnel package or a 21 personnel with Henry Parrish and Jerry and Ely, but one of those guys splitting out. There's only one person actually in the backfield. So I'm really curious about that. There's a lot of stuff they can do. They've been building this run game. Not many people will talk about it because everybody likes to bag on the pass coach. That's just like their favorite pastime. But they've been running that Rich Rodriguez zone run scheme for him in 2019. Last year they ran it and led the SEC. They were second when Rich Rod was here. So I expect them to roll quite a bit. And finally, the media are picking up on the fact this is not a pass team. Everybody thinks Lane Kiffin's slinging the ball all over the yard. Ole Miss runs the ball 60% of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. You got Jerry and Ely, why not? Of course, you should be handing the ball to Jerry and Ely, right? So, it makes sense. There's so many weapons for Ole Miss, and I know that there are going to be more on the outside, right, at wide receiver who are going to step up, who have a lot of talent. I'm just interested to see who becomes the guy, right, and who steps in for Elijah Moore's production.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens. I want to see Dontario Drummond in the middle, running those routes behind the linebackers in front of the free safeties, opening up the double moves on the outside. Should be pretty good. Let's go a little bit game by game. We're not going to talk necessarily about Tennessee and Bowling Green because that game will have already happened.
Right.
But Kentucky versus Louisiana Monroe, kickoff is noon. It's on the
Yep.
SEC Network. That is Rich Rod and Terry Bowden in that game, coaching against
Love it.
Kentucky. Will Levis, they've discovered the forward pass there. It's 1937 in Kentucky.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see what happens in that game.
Yeah, I am too. Kentucky, I think they're going to have a decent line this year. I think that they've got, obviously Chris Rodriguez Jr., they've got some good running backs there. And so, again, I'm interested to see, we know they can run the ball. Can they throw the ball? Can Will Levis, get the ball downfield? Their wide receivers last year, really didn't give their quarterbacks a lot of help. It's not that they really could give a ton of help. I mean, Terry Wilson could not throw the ball to save his life. So, we'll see if they've got some wide receivers. I know that they, got Wan'Dale Robinson, right, a transfer from Nebraska that they're really excited about. So I'm excited to see him in action. He could be one of those guys, right, that we're talking about on Sunday of having a big game if Will Levis can throw him the ball. I think Kentucky's going to have a decent defense again this year. So I'm excited to see what they do. I think the biggest thing for Kentucky here, right, and there's a few of these games on the schedule because there's always that game, right, in week one where you have a big name team, whether it be in the Big 12 or the SEC or something, who is just flirting with losing with somebody like a UL Monroe.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing for Kentucky this week is, implement your offense, see what Will Levis can do, and just don't lose.
Yeah. And with Kentucky, Liam Cohen calling the plays. One of the problems with that offense is it's so complex. It really is a complex offense. And Bill Callahan got in trouble, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago when he went to Nebraska trying to incorporate the whole offense into college. Something to pay attention to is if it's scaled back, something that the 24-hour rule can handle, something they can digest, and not have a paralysis by analysis situation.
Yeah, without a doubt, that's got to be the case. With those types of offenses, you got to in college for college kids, you got to implement them right on a scale. So, you started out, especially with like a UL Monroe. Let's implement the offense. Let's put a little bit more spice in there than we had in the spring and in fall camp. But by week 5, week 6 is when we need to be starting to see the rest of the offense and a bigger playbook, kind of come out. But in week 1 and 2. You just got to make sure the kids are comfortable and make sure you don't lose.
All right, let's move on to Fayetteville, Arkansas, where Arkansas starts its Southwest Conference slate against Rice coming up on the hill. I expect KJ Jefferson to make an impact. I want to see a little bit of a running game. I want to see what Kendall Briles can do. And I think next week they have Texas. They're just literally going through the Southwest Conference at this point.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, like I said in the outset, there's so many new quarterbacks. KJ Jefferson had a really good game against Mizzou last year. And so I'm excited to see what he can do in a full season and excited to see what he can do against a little bit inferior competition with Rice. And so that's really what I'm watching, right, is I'm watching KJ Jefferson, kind of Kendall Briles' offense. KJ's been there for, a year. He's got a year under his belt in that Briles offense. So I'm interested to see what they do there. I think Arkansas's defense is going to be stout this year. They got a ton of returners. They got Bumper Pool, Jalen Catalon. So they got guys on that defense. Their defensive line is a little bit suspect. They lose some on the defensive line, and they went to the transfer portal, to get some guys in there, which they're excited about. But, we'll see if they mesh. We'll see how they do. So a lot of good storylines in that game. I picked Arkansas to be last in the West. I picked them to be 6th. So right ahead of Mississippi State, which some Mississippi State fans may disagree with that. But, I'm interested to see if Arkansas looks the part. Everybody's excited about Sam Pittman there and excited about the momentum he's got. Can they take the next step, or is it going to be kind of another rebuilding year until they get to year 3 or year 4 when they can maybe make that step?
All right. In Atlanta, number 1 Alabama versus number 14 Miami. You know what? This game, I think this has a chance to be a scary game for Alabama. And the fact, this is, when I say that, I mean it like this. You you might look up at halftime and it's 14-14. Alabama's probably going to win the game 31-17.
Yeah.
But early, I just think there's a lot of potential with so many new pieces, so many chances for mistake. It could kind of rear up and be a little bit scary for them.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. My sense is that early on it's going to be a game, right? Maybe like you said, 14-14 going into halftime, something like that. But then at the end of the game, it's just Alabama's going to do what Alabama does, and I expect it to be, 41-20, right, or something like that. But I do think they could have trouble in the first half, with Miami because of De'Aaron King. We'll see how he looks, right? He's a mobile quarterback, and that's kind of been his MO all his college career. Can throw it a little bit too, but for the most part, he uses his legs to really beat you. So we'll see how he looks coming off that ACL injury. If he looks, he looks good and he looks like he's got mobility, Alabama could have some trouble. Those are the type of quarterbacks throughout Nick Saban's tenure that they do have trouble with on occasion. As an A&M grad, right, like Johnny Manziel comes to mind. They had trouble with Johnny Manziel and plenty others throughout, Saban's tenure as far as mobile quarterbacks go. So that's kind of something I'm watching, as well as, some of the new players that they're breaking in on offense. Like we talked about, they're replacing so much on offense. How do those guys look against, an ACC team who I don't want to say they're going to challenge Clemson, but my guess is that they'll be top 15 to 20 by the end of the year.
Yeah, they'll be up there with North Carolina by the time it's all said and done. Basically, also remember that Rhett Lashley is the offensive coordinator for Miami. Mobile quarterback, a Nick Marshall vibe from when he was at Auburn. He knows how to prepare for a Nick Saban defense. That's the reason I think they're going to come in ready to play and do what they need to do.
That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go Louisiana Tech and Mississippi State. Mississippi State started to get it going, little flashes towards the end of the year.
Yep.
Louisiana Tech, I think, they're a scary team in this matchup because they're that opening team. And Mike Leach, early in his campaigns at Washington State and Texas Tech, are known for dropping games. And this is one of those teams that could jump up and get Mississippi State. It might not affect their season at all, but just early in the season, that's something to pay attention to here.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I was kind of interested. It could be, again, Mike Leach playing some games, right? In Starkville, I think most people expected Will Rogers to trot out as the starter. I don't believe he's named the starter yet as of our recording. But my expectation is that Will Rogers is going to be the one trotting out. And so, like you said, though, these are traps, especially early on in Leach's career at a school. So I'm interested to see what they look like. Will Rogers, this is his second year right under Leach's offense. So how does he look? And then, they just got to replace a lot of guys from all those guys that transferred last year. I mean, the roster was decimated by the end of the year. And so I'm interested to see, Leach breaking in a lot of these new guys, seeing what they look like. I said this on the blog, but usually it's in year 3 or year 4 is when Leach makes the jump. So I don't expect a whole lot out of Mississippi State this year. In fact, I expect him to take a slight step back. But if Will Rogers sticks around for 4 years, right, and even if he doesn't, I think that in year 3 or year 4, the way that Leach is recruiting at 26, he was 26 last year and has him at 26 again this year. If he keeps recruiting at that clip, Mississippi State will make some noise just based on that offense. Yes,
and let's go on to Central Michigan at Mizzou. The Shark Humper against Elijah Drinkwitz. Central Michigan's a decent team. This is a game that could be scary, but somebody with athletes and as good as Missouri is, they should take care of them. Probably a 14 to 20 point win at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with that. For Mizzou, I really like Connor Bazelak. I really like Eli Drinkwitz. I wasn't too sure about that hire when Mizzou hired him just because he only had 1 year at App State. But based on last year, he really showed me something. I think he's got something going on at Mizzou. I'm interested to see at running back, what do they do? Larry Roundtree, the third was there and was leading rusher last year. I think he led the team in rushing maybe 2 years straight. Really solid running back there. So I was looking at the roster the other day. They got Tyler Beatty and Elijah Young are going to be the replacements there. So I want to see how they look. And then on defense, right, they got to replace Nick Bolton. And so they've got a kid who transferred in named Blaze Aldridge. I believe it's from Rice. And so I kind of want to see how he looks, right? How does he look filling in for Nick Bolton? I think the rest, what's that?
Blazer.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, Missouri, funny enough, I was looking through their roster. They've got a chance to be the all-name team this year. They got Blaze Aldridge and Toski Dove,
Really?
which is a great name, I thought. So,
I don't know. It's still no Cavassier Smoke or Bumper Pool.
That's true.
Yeah, I think those are A-listers.
There's some competition in the SEC for all-name team. There's no doubt about that. That's kind of what I'm looking for, as well as at wide receiver. I think that the wide receivers on that team can give Bazelak a little bit more help. And so they've got a few guys. I know that their top receivers returning. I believe that's Kiki Chisholm. So, we'll see how they look at wide receiver, but there's a few different things to watch in this game.
All right. Go down to the Plains where Akron, the Zips, come to town. I don't even know who the head coach is now after Terry Bowden left. But Auburn's like a 37-point favorite, and I don't know if they're 37 points better than anybody at this point.
I don't either. I mean, I'll take the under on that one. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially like we talked about at the outset, right? I mean, this is going to be Bo Nix's third offensive coordinator in 3 years, second head coach in 3 years. So, biggest thing I'm watching is that Bobo offense. Does Bobo's offense, how much is he putting in? How do the guys look in that offense? And really how Bo Nix has taken to his offense. Is Bo Nix, is his happy feet? Has he fixed that? And then also on the outside, right, they lost three of their top wide receivers, lost, Stove, Schwartz, and Seth Williams. So, who steps up at wide receiver for Bo Nix? Everybody's wondering what Bo Nix does this year. Well, a lot of that relies on what those wide receivers look like and how they do. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. They're also replacing a decent amount on the defensive line, but I believe they've got their top returning tackler back. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Go down to Williams-Brice in Columbia, South Carolina. Eastern Illinois is at South Carolina. Zeb taking snaps, although it's not going to matter. He's just going to hand the ball to Kevin Harris every play, and the Gamecocks should win this going away. But, I mean, operationally they'll be secure, but that's about it.
Yeah, I think that's right. Like we talked about at the outset again, we had Zeb Nolan trotting out at QB. How does that look? Who knows? I mean, that's going to be interesting. I
have no idea what the South Carolina offense is going to look like.
No, we don't. We have no clue.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting just to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's probably just going to be, like you said, hand the rock to Kevin Harris and just let him win you this game. Because let's just get to next week and let's get Luke Doty back, right? Other thing I'm watching for South Carolina is their secondary. They lost a good amount to the NFL as well to transfer from their secondary. So, I don't know what Eastern Illinois has on offense, but I am interested to see just kind of how those guys look, the new guys stepping up. So I don't know if I'll watch this game. We'll see. Maybe I'll watch it on replay.
Yeah, that's something maybe the 1 hour thing on YouTube will pop up the next day. You can catch it there. The game of the day in the SEC and perhaps the country, number 3 Clemson in Georgia, in Charlotte on ABC. I'm looking forward to that. Clemson's favored by, I think, 3 points at this point. And, JT Daniels, my whole thing during this whole offseason, this whole long offseason, was that will Kirby Smart take his thumb off the offense enough to allow his athletes to be athletes and play modern football?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see. The biggest thing that I'm looking at here in this game is, one, the offensive line. Can they protect JT Daniels enough, for him to be able to get the ball out? And then as well, in the run game, right? The run, Georgia's got a stable of running backs. They got no problem at running back, right? Whoever they trot out on the field, whether it be Zamir White or James Cook, or any of the other newer guys they've got in. I'm forgetting the third guy's name, who I know is a stud.
Milton, I believe.
Yeah, exactly, Milton. Yeah, thank you, Milton. So I'm interested to see how that offensive line looks. Can they get pushed against Clemson's defensive line? I was looking at some stats today. Clemson, I think, has a ton of guys who have starts coming back, who've got a ton of playing time, who've got a ton of experience under their belt. So it'll be interesting to see how that offensive line goes against Clemson's defensive line. And then I'm also looking on defense. For Georgia, Clemson's breaking in a new QB. DJ,
Ukulele.
however you say his name. So how does that defense look against DJ, and can they affect him? Right, he's a new quarterback. He's only had, I think, one start under his belt. Right, he started against Boston College when Trevor Lawrence was out last year, and looked good, but had to make a comeback. Right, so. How can Georgia's defense affect DJ, and does it get to DJ enough to where it affects the game and Georgia can pull it out?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm thinking Georgia's going to take that game. I'm willing to take Georgia and the points on that one and just roll all day long. Florida Atlantic at Florida. Emory Jones starting debut. N'Kosi Perry, Miami transfer at FAU. I'm a little bit interested in that game. I think it's a 24-point line. I mean, Florida's going to win this game pretty handily. Yeah. But, I mean, it might be interested in seeing what's going on. This could be the last chance hotel for Willie Taggart and the boys.
Yeah, it definitely could be. Like I talked about in the last podcast with you, talking about Emory Jones. I think people are kind of sleeping on Florida a little bit. For whatever reason, there's this big narrative on Twitter out there that Dan Mullen can't coach, he's not a good coach. I think that's completely ridiculous. I know they went 8-4 last year, but they were in the SEC championship, had a Heisman finalist, and produced a ton last year. Dan Mullen coached Dak Prescott, Mississippi State, got him to number one in the country while he was there. So I think Dan Mullen's a good coach. I'm interested to see how Emory Jones looks. And I think he's going to be a really good quarterback for Florida. So I really want to see how he looks in Mullen's offense, how Mullen's offense looks around him, right? Kyle Trask obviously was much more of a pocket passer and just trying to distribute the ball to guys like Tony and Pitts. But what does it look like with Emory Jones? My expectation is he's going to use a lot more of his legs, right? We're going to see a lot more read options and run plays, play actions, things of that nature for Emory Jones. And then the other thing I'm looking at with Florida is their defensive line, right? It's funny enough, right? You look back at the stats last year, and Florida had a ton of sacks. I believe they led the SEC in sacks, but not many of those came from their defensive line, which is very un-Florida-like, right? So I'm interested to see what their defensive line looks like and see if they can get back on track this year.
Yeah. Let's go down to College Station where the Kent State Flashes come into town. Haynes King's debut. That place is going to be rocking. I think they announced today that Jimbo's going to be extended and given a raise. What do you think about that game?
I didn't see that. I was all into work. That's awesome. It's good news. Okay.
Yeah. It's breaking news, right here.
Absolutely.
What do you, other than Haynes King, because everybody's going to be paying attention to Haynes King in that game, what else are you looking for from Texas A&M?
A little bit similar to Georgia. I'm looking at the offensive line. The offensive line, Jimbo has recruited really well on the offensive line. There's a ton of dudes. We've got a ton of depth in the offensive line. But what do they look like? They got a mesh, right? Mm-hmm. You lose 4 starters from last year's offensive line, and so now you're just trying to figure out who's going to be the guy other than Kenyon Green on that line, and can they mesh quickly? So the offensive line is something I'm looking at. I also want to see Haynes King and the wide receivers, right? Haynes King, you're breaking in a new quarterback. Everybody in College Station has very high expectations for him. As soon as he committed to A&M, the hype train kind of went through the roof on Haynes King. So we're excited about that, but I want to see how he looks with the wide receivers. The wide receivers in last year's group didn't produce as well as Aggies kind of hoped that they would. they didn't necessarily have to, right? Because you had Isaiah Spiller in the backfield and you
Right.
had Agent Zero and Nia Smith, so you could just give him the ball. And then, Devin A-Chain broke out late in the year. So you didn't necessarily need him. But this year, I think they are going to need him, right? Haynes King is going to need a safety valve. We know how good Jalen Weidermeyer is. But what about guys like Damon DeMoss, maybe a Moose Muhammad, who's a young guy who could step up? Hezekiah Jones, who's had kind of an okay career. And there's a bunch of different wide receivers in that room that I'm interested to see if they can break out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. All in Nashville, East Tennessee State at Vanderbilt. Now, I am the president of the Ken Seals fan club. I did not.
Yeah.
I do not know if you know that, but I am the
I
president
don't
of
know
that.
that. I want to join.
Yeah, his dad follows me on Twitter. I say so many nice things about Ken Seals.
Love it.
Yes, I'm dead serious about this. I'm not making this up. And I'm looking forward to seeing how he breaks it free in this Clark Lee offense, what the defense looks like. Will the defense exist again in Vanderbilt? It's not so much about ETSU. If Vanderbilt can win 3 or 4 games, it's a successful season.
I agree with you there. Thinking about these games, looking at the schedule for this week, kind of looking up and down the rosters. That was actually in my notes, right? Is Ken Seals. He's a solid quarterback. He played really well in his time last year, even though obviously Vanderbilt had a rough year. He was kind of one of the bright spots. And so I want to see if he can step up. Can he take the next step? Obviously, new coaching staff, going to be breaking in a new offense. So we'll see. But he's really what I'm watching in this game is Ken Seals. How does he look? And can he maybe steal one from somebody later in the year? I mean, look, they walked into College Station last year with Ken Seals and almost
First
pulled it
start.
out.
First start.
Yeah, first start for Ken Seals. So, I'm not sleeping on this kid. I think he's solid. I think he's a good QB, and I want to see what he looks like under Clark Lee.
Yeah, absolutely. LSU at UCLA. This is game 2 for UCLA, and they just shut it down in the second half and were dominant.
Yeah, they
week
were.
1.
Yeah.
LSU is relocating because of weather. They're at NRG Stadium in Houston, and it took them like 12 hours to get there. So that upheaval and everything going on, I think this has a chance to be a sneaky good game.
Yeah, I think it does too. I'll tell you what. I think the Rose Bowl is going to be rocking based on that crowd from last week. I mean, just what a massive crowd. So I think LSU is going to be intimidated walking into the Rose Bowl.
Well, they said limited tickets are available for the LSU game. So I don't know what's going on there, how you can go from 15,000 to 90,000, but I don't know.
My expectation is that they're probably blocking off a whole ton of seats. And I also saw something that they were like giving away seats to some high school bands or something like that. So, yeah, they're trying to figure out all kinds of ways to fill that stadium. But, yeah, I mean, the upheaval with the hurricane, right? For LSU, I think kind of throws a wrench into this, maybe makes it a little more interesting of a game than I think it would be. It's funny, Herbie, I was watching him on game day last weekend. He's high on UCLA. He has them, I believe, going to the championship game in the Pac-12. So, and
their
running
backs look legit. Their running backs look really good.
They do, right? And you got DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, coming back at QB. So they could give LSU a scare. We'll see. But I really want to see what Max Johnson looks like. I've liked what I've seen from him from last year. Also, just some of the videos I've seen out of camp and a few of the things I've seen on Twitter about him, about his leadership and how he's kind of taken the reins there. And then I'm also kind of interested to see the defense, right? We know that they've got a lot of guys coming back. Eli Ricks, right? Stingley on the outside. But the defense was porous last year. And it just not in LSU fashion. You got Bo Pelini's gone now. I'm sure everybody in Baton Rouge is just thrilled about that. But LSU has a ton of talent on defense. I think they will make a comeback this year and be an LSU defense of old that we're used to. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. How do they look? You've got those weapons that you mentioned for UCLA that could make it interesting. So how does LSU's defense look against those guys?
Yeah, and I think Stingley and Ricks allows the front seven to really press that run game against UCLA, and there's a chance
Absolutely.
you can make hay doing that. But if they
Yeah.
decide to get a little weird, who knows?
Who
Um,
knows?
yeah, we go to the last game in Atlanta, Ole Miss and Louisville, Labor Day night, the debut of Matt Corral, and
Yeah.
I talked with Cameron Teague today, and he was talking about Louisville and what they're doing. They're high on their defense. There's a lot of unknown questions with their wide receivers position. There's a lot
Yeah.
of questions about the running back position. Other Malik Cunningham, it's kind of a show me situation offensively. Which playing a team like Ole Miss, that's got to be a scary proposition.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to what we've talked about with Ole Miss a ton is the defense. How does the defense look? How does the defense respond? The defense has been what keeps other teams in games right now, against Ole Miss. Ole Miss's offense, nobody's worried about it. You guys are going to put up, 30, 40, 50 sometimes points a game. So it's really about that defense. How does the defense look? I know that Kiffin has done a decent bit of recruiting right on the defensive side of the ball. So you got some new guys coming in there. You'll know more about this than I will, but maybe they're starting, some new guys on the defense. I know Tywone Malone was a huge recruit. I looked at the depth chart today. I know he's an OR. He's in second, I think, in OR. But I wonder if he gets into the rotation, right? Like Ole Miss needs all the help they can get on defense. Why not start or at least give some playing time to some of these younger guys and see what they can do? So that's really what I'm watching.
Yeah, a lot of looking at the defense on the Ole Miss team, like Chance Campbell transferred in from Maryland. Honorable mention, All Big Ten. Jake Springer was an all-conference guy at Navy. He was a transfer that they couldn't get eligible last year. Otis Reese only played 1 or 2 games. So there's some talent being infused onto that defense.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what's going on. They also signed the 2 top JUCO defensive linemen in the country and the signing period. So it'll be interesting. Tywone Malone's out there playing end on the depth chart. Yeah,
it's a big boy at end.
Yeah, and I think he's playing end in a 3-4 personally. And whenever they're in a 4-2-5 or whatever, he's not going to be playing in there. But I'm looking forward to seeing that game and what wrinkles they throw out.
Same.
Yeah. So I do want to say thank you for coming by and giving us our preview, our little SEC preview with Biscuits and SEC right here on Positively Ole Miss. I will shoot you the link of the video, and you can shoot it out in your newsletters over the next couple of days if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And, if people want to go and sign up for our newsletter, they can go to biscuitsandsec.com. There will be a little pop-up. You can just throw your email in right there. And we're on Twitter at Biscuits and SEC and Instagram at Biscuits and SEC as well, and on Facebook. So come by and see us. Thank you for having me again, Stephen. I appreciate it, and cannot wait for college football today, Saturday, when this airs.
Yeah, it's big time. So anyway, for Bossman Slim, I am Stephen Willis.